So how can we take more effective climate action, have more people step up to the plate and do what we need to do to discover that? It has to do with the human potential and discovering the secret to it. That's what we've been doing. And so stick with us because here we go. So we're talking about taking climate action and discovering the secret to it, having to do with the unfolding story we are being called to tell and what's in it for you. My name is Art Johnson. I'm the founder and Chief Learning Officer and CEO of New World Communications here in Lynnwood, Washington. This is week 16, and this is April the 21st, 2023. So here we go. It started when I turned 50 in 1997. I was at KCTS 9 Public Television in Seattle, and a whole new world of communications and e-learning was emerging. It was opening up that I was called from within to seize. At the time, I was a broadcast public television distance learning project manager. And because of the nature of the technology with all the fancy expensive cameras and the, when having a broadcast television station, the only thing that viewers could do and be is critical viewers. We could watch other people's great content. But I was inspired by the content that I did watch, and it was really a great learning experience for 5 whole years. But in my 5th year there, because of the internet, I really started getting interested in the idea of doing some of my own media. And so I developed a techno-literate classroom with what I was learning. And I taught myself digital media and HTML and designed an early prototype for a web-based virtual classroom. And it was actually my beginning of what I call now critical doing, where we produce our content, viewers produce it, as a startup African-American entrepreneur in 1997. And right around that time, even before I left the station, I was having quite a bit of fear and anxiety about what I was being called to do. I had very little experience really successfully running my business. And a friend of mine blessed me with a copy of Ernest Holmes' little pamphlet, little booklet called Your Invisible Power. And it was a popular little booklet first written in 1940 by Dr. Ernest Holmes, 6 years before my birth in 1946. And when I read it, my experience reading it was like Dr. Holmes knew of my fear and anxiety over starting my company and was speaking directly to me right when I needed it. And part 1, called God, Your Silent Partner, said that we are in partnership with the infinite mind and that the name of this partnership is God and Company. That meant I was not alone, that I would have to understand how to communicate with my silent partner. And then it said the supreme intelligence, the universal creative order, the dynamic law, and the all-perfect presence. This is God, the silent partner. I didn't quite know what that meant, but I knew enough to hold on to that little booklet, and I kept it kind of in my bureau drawer right next to my bed and say, wow, I know this is important. When I'm ready to dive into it, I think I will. And it did have me dive deeper into it more recently. And I discovered that he is the founder and father of the science of mind. And he had an introductory little booklet that came my way. I think was divinely guided to it, called Basic Ideas of Science of Mind. And it was a primer to his voluminous Science of Mind, multiple pages that I own now. It was a short, basic, concise, and powerful introduction to his Science of Mind. And it's all about the power of your word spoken to your subconscious self and simultaneously to universal mind that goes to work making your word and even your negative self-talk powerfully happen. So it told me I needed to wake up and be aware of how I'm creating my own reality. And this really goes right now with, the doing my YouTube channel and speaking not only to a YouTube audience, but to the universe, which is listening. Wow. Having things happen is a matter of learning and mastering the science of mind. That is, what it is, how it works, and how to use it. Now's the capital I, the it is that experience of that something else, that power greater than we are, that of which we are part of its expression. And then, along that same kind of idea of personal development and human potential, my wife gave me a copy one Christmas of What the Bleep. It was a DVD by J.Z. Knight that her students had to introduce the public to the implications of quantum physics for spirituality in 2004. Night students were from her Rhonda School of Enlightenment in Yelm, Washington, and produced a provocatively creative film starring Marlee Maitland. If you haven't seen this film, it'd be worth the watch. There are actually two versions. The first version wasn't really finished, but they had to get it out there. And then What the Bleep, Down the Rabbit Hole was the further extension of it finished. J.Z. Knight is a psychic mystic in real life who channels herself as 35,000-year-old Ramtha from the lost world of Atlantis. She calls herself the Enlightened One and operates her Ramtha School of Enlightenment in Yelm, Washington. I've actually met some friends and colleagues who have been students, members of that Ramtha School of Enlightenment, actually moved down the realm to further pursue their journey. But this amazing low-budget film creatively got a broader public interested in a broader understanding of reality, down the rabbit hole of quantum physics, spirituality, and expressed a deeper sense of an evolving history of consciousness. That rang a bell with me because I was actually enrolled at one time in the History of Consciousness program at UC Santa Cruz. Retrospectively, the experience made me even more aware of what Ernest Holmes had told me about this awesomely powerful silent partner of mine and of ours, and this God and Company partnership of ours. And then there was Rhonda Byrnes, The Secret, in 2006, 2 years later, that captured the popular mind. Rhonda Byrnes was an Australian journalist who produced this low-budget film first as a DVD that became a best-selling self-help book that was basically transcribed from the script of the DVD. And it was actually inspired by Wallace D. Wattles. The story is that her daughter had discovered this little book written in 1910 by Christian socialist Wallace D. Wattles, a New Thought person, who and at that time Rhonda was kind of rock bottom, had to figure out what to do with her life and what she could do. And then this thing spoke to her like, wow, here's a whole project. I could produce this video and let the public know about this law of attraction. The secret was about the law of attraction. I want to talk about that because it's really informing what I'm calling enlightened business development, and how it's going to really be more powerful to help people really develop themselves and address climate change as climate action. And, what I learned was many people at the time in the New Thought movement knew about and actually practiced the law of attraction. So The Secret was really kind of like a really, just first kind of little, shallow dive into it. And, but the thing that Byrnes learned was that there were whole audiences of multiple faith-based New Thought leaders and their audiences who immediately would buy the DVD and the book. And this helped its meteoric success with an even broader audience. So, my learning takeaway is, what if I produce some content like that really could speak to that very center of people's being, and unleash the power. And so here's how we've been making it happen decade after decade. New World Communications is the name of my remote consulting practice and virtual enterprise. And my mission has been to provide intelligent communications for a 21st century world. My sense of intelligence has gone much deeper now that I'm discovering the intelligence of the universe and learning how to tap into it. And the vision is now, and I've added the word timely, to deliver timely mission critical learning a new world needs, a new world that needs to survive, at least for civilization to survive. But phase one, after I left the station, was from 1997 to 2008, to develop affordable web presence and e-commerce for small business people. Most of them were take action craftswomen who just I fell in love with, and they fell in love with me and had me do their websites and photography and train them on how to get their orders from their websites and all of that. And then that ended. That marketplace got kind of soft. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry decided they could make websites, and so that the bottom of that dropped out right at the right time when I discovered, well, there's a whole lot that I've learned that maybe I needed to add an e-learning component to my businesses. So it launched a whole second phase where I trained to become an instructional designer. And then phase three happened in 2022, kind of when things really shifted because of COVID-19 and the fact that more and more people were starting to meet over Zoom, which really was a wake-up call that I needed to really start developing my enterprise and help other people navigate that whole idea, that whole experience. And I was further inspired by new thought and new faith with active hope across generations of people. Not only the young folks, with Greta Thunberg, but also I've discovered elders like myself who are just been doing amazing things and who I'm, developing relationships with. And it's also I've been treating myself to what they call spiritual mind treatment. This is the essence of really what I've discovered what Ernest Holmes is about, is treating himself and to the world to spiritual mind treatment. And there are actually 5 steps. And then recently, through my faith-based community, one of my people that I've met introduced me to a great book about 5 steps to freedom, an introduction to spiritual mind treatment by John Waterhouse. It's great for learning how to master the 5 steps. And the first step, which I want to just kind of relate in a broader sense to recognition of God in nature. When you really study and meditate on nature and experience its beauty, what you also become very much aware of the presence of this greater force that created it all, expressed as omniscience, omnipotence, and everywhere present omnipresence. And so that has really inspired me and got me fired up. And I think it's going to be the thing that people need to discover within themselves who care about climate, but they haven't developed themselves in their faith, in their belief, and their power to take this on. But as an educator, an e-learning educator, that's what I'm about. And I've found myself unified in and by this presence. Just the fact that this something greater than we are is omnipresent means that, and it's at the center of everything. It's at the very center of my own being. And so I'm unified in it and by this presence. And that's really amazing. And it's helping me realize and express some of this power through me and as me for taking effective climate action, accessing and using the very laws of creation. Wow. I say this with humility because I'm still learning and just still discovering how it works and how to use it, and how to use it rightly. And I am so grateful. I am so grateful that as I speak my word, that both my subconscious mind and the mind of the universe are already working on having it made manifest. But this is really good. I don't have very many viewers. If I look at the metrics of YouTube, I have very few subscribers, and I have very few comments so far. But my faith and understanding that I'm also speaking to the universe, and that when the time is right, that things are going to blow up in a very, very nice way, is making me most grateful. And so with an abiding faith, the fifth step is called release. With an abiding faith that my good is already on the way, I release all doubt, as well as release amazing, powerful energy through me as my work proceeds. So this is the story that we are being called to tell from within. And it starts with, you're going to really relate to this, everybody for a long time, until we learned about the impact of climate change, we're kind of trying to do business as usual, as much as we could call that usual. There were still all the issues and challenges of the business as usual life, that many of us experienced. But pretty much it was a whole different situation until we discovered the great unraveling. Joanna Macy and other folks have really talked about the things that are falling apart, the whole systems and whole ways of thinking, whole ways of thought and doing are no longer serving us well, particularly when it comes to adding more carbon dioxide and methane and other gases, and the frustration and the violence and all that kind of stuff. So we now move into a whole challenge period of time on multiple fronts that I've had to deal with, and we all of us had to deal with. I've had to deal with COVID. I've experienced racism all my life in interesting ways as an African-American male, and ageism after age 50 and even before, sexism in terms of trying to understand the roles and, the parts of me that are, more receptive to what's going on with gender and all of that, and the politics. Wow, that has gotten so so challenging and threatening to the very idea, the democratic idea, and of war. Oh my goodness, war in the world. It's scary, so scary, that borders on probably nuclear holocaust, while the climate continues to heat up. And the good news, however, which is really what I'm about, is the great turning. So at the same time that you have this great unraveling, what I'm discovering is a great turning. Many, many different groups of people, they're kind of groups of people. The young people kind of work together, and the old, the elders start working together, and people across the planet are getting organized in their countries. And but it's all consciousness evolving. And what really has got me excited is I have a great set of tools and skills and heart for doing global communications and e-learning. And by using our humanity in really good ways and intelligently, that we can resolve a lot of things on mutual funds, we can really at least remediate or ameliorate some of the loss of life in climate change. We could start to, we're overcoming COVID. We're dealing with racism on a more realistic way, even ageism. I'm looking at the challenge of ageism as an opportunity to organize my own elder virtual enterprise, okay, and consulting practice to help more and more people. And of course, monitoring my health as I age and dealing with the politics, but in a more enlightened way, and the economy, and really focusing on peace, starting with peace from within, and then working on the peace in the world, and doing some amazing, really innovative things with climate action. And so this is about our why in 2023, with the world on fire, literally on fire. And that got me really to focus back on amazing Abraham Maslow's father of humanistic psychology, hierarchy of needs that he came up with in 1943, 3 years before my birth, that has to deal with all these areas of need that, many people are now, their basic needs. They're losing their homes and they're not safe. And there's a lot of mental illness because people do not have a feeling of love or belonging to the world. And people are losing self-esteem and feeling like they can't accomplish much. And then there's, of course, the self-fulfillment needs. There's actually, I'm thinking about how we flip this whole pyramid upside down and make it into an hourglass that starts with, that it's really holistic. It's not necessarily linear, to build a whole new, healthier world, a whole new world of communications and learning. And part of what has helped that has been a certain epiphany. An epiphany is kind of a spiritual experience that really makes you see your life in a whole new light, and it evolved with meeting face to face with people in the clouds across the planet inside of virtual architecture more than 15 years ago, and realizing the potential global impact. And so here's what happened with me. It started with way back in about 1996, right when I had launched my business. There was a company out of Sweden that had come up with a system that was a early generation internet conferencing that used webcams from Sweden, called Meritech. And Meritech came right along when I needed a new direction for my life and business affairs. So I reached out to them, and it used webcams, but it didn't use a web browser even. And it was a costly client server architecture that actually prevented its adoption. But the learning takeaway was, by experiencing it, and at the same time, the simultaneous emergence of Google Earth and SketchUp virtual architecture that made buildings that could map to Google Earth, I underwent a kind of an amazing, almost spiritual epiphany. Like, here was an ultra affordable, ultra eco-friendly, near zero carbon footprint, instant virtual transportation, the virtual architecture that whole groups of people could meet inside of, do business, conference, and convene inside of. And so that really got me thinking about, maybe one day I could actually develop a whole virtual architecture that could really have that happen beyond just meeting in web conferencing. So what's in this for you? Here, let's take a fresh look of how New World Communication Services have since evolved and developed. And so with all of this stuff kind of influencing me in this kind of enlightened business development approach, I've developed a whole series of global communicate services to help you reach, engage, and close more enlightened business and flow more good. I'm talking about not only flowing more money, but more good, for the good of humanity and for the good of our planet and all species life on it. And I start with virtual consulting services that I do over Zoom. And since that time, I've been developing more advanced responsive web services. I'll talk about how that works out. And I started experimenting with physical world live event streaming, using lower cost technology, because in the old days at the station, we had to have an uplink truck, $35,000 cameras, and old crew. And even then, the lag time was really, it took first seconds just for the signal to get there from a satellite. And but then I started, and more recently, reaching out to groups of people doing virtual focus groups and strategic planning to get on target and be spot on with the people that I serve. And this is informing many, many things. And then a few years ago, I joined the Puget Sound Organizational Development Network just so I could learn how to do interventions in the corporate workplace. And I introduced the idea of doing virtual organizational development to that group of people who looked at me like I was a space cadet. They had no experience of what I was talking about, and just were like, oh, this will never happen and all that. But now is the time for it to happen. And since that time, I've developed an idea of doing whole mobilization campaigns. I'm on a campaign right now that uses all the tools that I've come up with to really evolve and arrive at doing world-class virtual conferences and trade shows with a lot of spin-off, a world-class consulting practice I'm putting together, and eventually even doing some real reality television, that talks about people across the planet taking active climate action and succeeding. And so now we're developing entire virtual enterprises in the cloud. That's a Zoom call there, sharing Zoom on various platforms. And I started using the whole suite of Google Apps and the Google Workplace, they call it now, to further develop that. And most recently, after I was inspired, it took me a while to experience. I called a friend and about trying to find a developer to develop some kind of a massive platform in 3D. And he said, "Had you heard about Virbela?" And then bang, I'm on Virbela as my virtual avatar self. That's the person in the middle there is me, and that's my 12 office virtual office team suite, the cost of which is less than it would cost you to rent one parking space in downtown Seattle for a month, under $100. And then the other picture is me in the virtual expo hall that is available to me and that people can access either as their virtual selves or with the idea of Zoom can at least experience in that. So here's my whole suite of e-learning services that start with virtual focus groups, reaching out to you and to other groups of people, finding out what they need and getting on target with how to serve them. And this is also informing my programming on YouTube, which I'm doing now. And this in turn is going to be informing the workshops and courses that people need to mobilize themselves and human potential, and to do whole mobilization campaigns, even streaming live from from physical world restaurants and doing some programming there very innovatively to recruit more people and to spread the word. And then arriving at virtual conferences and trade shows and essentially landing additional instructional design work and streaming more virtual events and building global strategic partnerships across the planet. And I also have substance-wise, curriculum-wise, a New World Learning Institute and Conference Center. And my big idea is delivering the mission-critical and timely curriculum a New World needs. Boy, do we need a different kind of curriculum that, covers the gaps. And developing intergenerational e-learning services. with elders and young people and doing some work even in virtual reality. And so here's a concept that I can work with you on. It's actually a 2.5D conference and trade show idea. If you go visit my website, there's a tour. You see that I have the ability to develop virtual lobbies where you can communicate with a virtual receptionist over Zoom. You can attend a massively large event in virtual auditoria. You can meet concurrently in concurrent breakout sessions in virtual meeting center. And for the last year, with a dear friend of mine, I had actually been supporting 12-hour face-to-face sessions over Zoom, kind of empowerment sessions. And also, now I've developed even a virtual exhibition hall with booths, so you can actually have people meet with you in your booth. So if you are a climate action company or service, and you want to have people visit your booth and talk about your service, learn about your services, and maybe recruit people for your operation, this is going to be an excellent opportunity, not only to present, but also to exhibit. And this can be a hybrid world experience where some people can be in the 3D virtual lobby. They can meet with me in my virtual office suite. They can attend a virtual auditorium. They can participate in 3D planning mini conferences that I actually have a beautiful conference room right on my team suite. And they can Zoom in all day 12-hour sessions. And some people can be in the expo hall and other people can be on Zoom, communicating with some of those people as well. So it's a hybrid world, really creative solution that a spirit is expressing through me and as me. So what's next for you? Well, step one is I would suggest that you visit our website, New World Communications, www.newworldcom.com, and tour our site. And we actually have a downloadable guide. We've been developing this guide that talks about a manager's guide to developing business in the 21st century world. By the way, we produced a really nice animated suite in our e-learning services with a CEO to model really progressive, socially responsible CEO opportunity that deals with the challenges that corporations are really having right now. And then the third step is to request a consultation with me. So let me just stop my share. And to further communicate, you can reach me by text me at 206-920-8067 or call me on that number. Or you can email me at support@newworldcom.com, or you can visit my website at www.newworldcom.com. That's New World Communications. And you can, once you're there, you can go to the contact us page and request an appointment, a complimentary consultation with you and maybe key people in your group or organization or company about how we can best serve you in terms of where you're going. There's no company, there's no organization, there's no individual who is not being impacted by climate change now. So even though you might be into something else, shipping, or you might be deciding, well, I'm going to focus on working with mentoring youth and all that, everyone is impacted. And the whole new opportunity is emerging as some things are being challenged and having to go away. Others are, as part of this great turning, are happening, which I don't want you to miss. And, not only learning about them, but mastering how to succeeding with them. So that's what I'm about. And it's an enlightened business development approach. It's not woo-woo. It's really what I'm learning from the whole, there's the whole evolving conscious evolution that's happening right at the same time that we need to develop our human potential, and we need deeper faith, because you can look around and see all this stuff and be so sad and so overwhelmed that you don't take care of business. Some people are even taking their lives because they just don't have good solutions. They don't understand their connection with this divinely guided evolution that is unfolding before our very eyes. Nature itself is telling us so much about its systems and how to work and how to align with this power that could really, the power of the sun, the power of the wind, the power of the elements, and how we can, using innovation and tapping into the very essence, creative essence of our being. This is what I'm learning and discovering. So stick with me, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.